Welcome to the Finding the Magic podcast, where books come alive. I'm Tricia Copeland, a fiction author and host of this show. If you love books, finding great reads, and hearing about the story behind the story directly from the authors, this is the place for you. Whether you like fantasy, science fiction, dystopian, or romance titles, I think you'll find something to love in my playlist. Listen in to discover something magical about a book or two today.
Hi, Erica.
Hi, Tricia. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast.
Of course. Well, thank you for being here. Today we have Erika Krouse. She is the author of the new Save Me Stranger. She was on my podcast almost 3 years ago for Tell Me Everything, which I love. I love to hate the book, I should say. It was amazingly written, and I'm so glad you had those breaks the breaks were kind of sad and hard to read too, but at least they weren't as heart-wrenching as like the normal storyline. So I really appreciated those, and I thought it was masterfully done. Obviously, I'm not the be-all, end-all critic of books, but I loved it. So
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So I'm super excited to, one, read, because I haven't read your new short story compilation, but tell me all about Save Me Stranger.
Sure. So it's a collection of short stories, and they're set all over the place. Like I have one in the coldest town on earth in Siberia, and one in a Tokyo suburb, and I have another in Bangkok, and in Omaha, and Colorado, and Alaska. So they're all across the globe and this country as well. And they all the different stories, feature different characters, completely different characters, and the book itself features it centers around themes of rescue. So it kind of asks the question, what do we owe each other? Can we save each other? Can we help each other? Should we do these things? So I just use the book as a way of exploring these questions for myself.
That's really interesting. I was just walking with a friend yesterday, and I think it was Mel Robbins or somebody like that has this catchphrase like "let them," and she was telling me that that's her new catchphrase. Like, well, they want to do it, let them. It's not my responsibility, and it's more like, you know, for people like me who feel like they have to come in and rescue everyone, and really,
Right.
They're adults. Maybe they need to rescue themselves, right?
Right.
But
Yeah.
anyway, so
Sometimes that's true, right? But I do feel that sometimes a lot of people, the people who usually don't ask, are the ones who need a helping hand. And I wanted to play with that idea of like, what if the help comes from strangers, and how do we relate to each other? Because you always help your family, you always help your friends, etc. But what about the people that you literally bump into? What are we doing for them? And is that our job? And where are the boundaries too? Because some people are black holes of need, and you can get your whole life sucked up into their needs too. So it was a whole bunch of different scenarios and stories and investigations into that question.
and have you visited all the places you set your stories in?
I lived in most of them. I lived in Omaha. I lived in Colorado. I lived in Tokyo. I visited Bangkok. I've never ever. There's one story that's set in the coldest town on earth in Siberia, and I can't visit there. It costs, I think, like $20,000-$30,000, and now nobody, of course, can visit Russia. So that's not an option. But just getting there is incredibly difficult. It takes 3 years, and you have to travel by caravan, because if
Oh.
if one of the vehicles breaks down, you'll die before anyone gets to you. So I think they travel in caravans of 2 or 3, just to make sure that you arrive. um, and so it's and it's the coldest town on earth, so it's the temperatures are so cold. If you throw boiling water into the air, it like immediately freezes, and it's just like that. And I was fascinated with that, and I've been researching that place for over 10 years, just out of interest. But I can't visit that one. But all the other places I've been, Texas, or New Mexico or whatever, and internationally as well. So that does help, and and those are the places I felt a little more comfortable writing about, frankly. Yeah, because I'm like, oh, I know this one. I know what Tokyo's like, for example.
Well, just for your safety, I would say yes, don't go to the coldest city. That would be out of my comfort zone. I
Oh
am
my
a warm
gosh.
weather person.
I think most places, like they're like, oh yeah, it's safe to go outside until it hits 50 below, and then we cancel school. And I'm like, oh my God, you're sending children into 50 below weather, but they're used to it. It's their way of life, and it'll reach 100 degrees in the summer, so it has these really amazing swings.
Huh.
I find that place really super interesting, and the culture there really, really, really interesting. So that was a fun story to write about, that place and those characters.
Yeah, it seems like they would be, I mean, I don't know how many people live there, but it seems like they would be like a really tight knit community.
Yeah, because there aren't that many people there. And I think a lot of people leave there for like to work in the mirror mine, or to seek warmer climate sometimes. But they also do have a thriving community there. So it's kind of, I find that place really super interesting. And then other places, they're not always places that I think are lovely. Like I did live in Omaha, and that story is about a young, like a teenager who runs away from her bad uncle, and drives an ice cream truck through gangland territories in Omaha. And I'm like, well, I kind of did do something similar when I lived in Omaha very briefly. I did drive an ice cream truck in some very, very sketchy areas, and a lot of the characters in that story are people that I met and people that I encountered. So I did mix a lot of my life in there as well, but at its heart, it's still fiction.
Oh, neat. Yeah, well, you have such an interesting background. I mean, I first met you after you wrote Tell Me Everything, and you'd worked for the private investigator. How long did you work with them?
I worked. I think I worked as a private investigator for about 15 years. Yeah, and I worked for the attorney for most of that time, and then also just I had my shingle out, so I worked for different people too. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's amazing career path there.
Oh, I've done so many stupid things. Besides the like weird ice cream selling. I mean, I used to sell tarot. I used to read tarot cards down on the Pearl Street Mall. I used to play piano for funerals and weddings. I've done like all the weirdest jobs. Really, like anything for money when I was super broke. At one point I was trying to count all my jobs, and I was like, I can't. I kept forgetting things, and later I'd be like, oh yeah, and I did this thing, and oh yeah, I sold shoes at Tom McCann. I mean, like all these bizarre, just bizarre things that really no one should do.
Well, but do you think it's helped you like meet so many different people that you have all those rich characters to add to your stories?
Oh, absolutely. I don't know if you feel this way, Trisha, but I love to read stories about work. I love anything that's work related. I find it to be more interesting because people interact with each other in a totally different way at work, and they have to be there. There are other things keeping them there, and then each work culture is a different culture. So I don't know. Have you ever had any weird jobs yourself?
Well, I worked yeah, I have had a couple of weird jobs. I mean, I worked in fast food. I've
Mm.
worked in a chemistry lab. I've
Oh.
worked not any of that. I mean, not that out there. Not like um, chemistry lab. I've worked in research. I've worked, a
Hmm.
couple of different. Yeah, one attorney I worked for, I worked out of this basement, and that was very uncomfortable because you're in somebody's house and their dogs, their kids, and their wife are there sometimes, and that's
Yeah. I worked
very
out of
interesting.
basements too. I remember a couple jobs I had in basements, but luckily with women and not with men, that would make me very uncomfortable. I think if I'm in a basement and then there are chains shackled to the wall, and you're like, what are those for?
No,
Just
that would be
kidding.
bad.
That would
I
be
would
bad.
have left that situation.
No, that didn't actually happen with me. I
Oh,
was
okay.
no, there's like it's perfectly safe. There's, like a beautiful lab and, not laboratory, but like Labrador. Yeah, like totally fine. But what kind of chemistry?
Wet chemistry. So it was a testing lab. So testing water and soil samples for contaminants. Kind of, that's how I paid my bills, paid my way through college. But yeah,
Oh,
but
that's a good college
you
job.
have these work families, right? Like you
Yeah.
have there, and I think it seems like everywhere I've been, people structure themselves sort of like a family. You have the sister, you have the brother, you have the mom, you have the
Right. And you have the sibling you don't get along with, and you have the one who's always telling you what to do, with the PI work, for Tell Me Everything, it was weird. There are families and family cultures, but you're always the black sheep of that, and you're always like the prodigal daughter who's been cast from the family. Really, you're very much on the outside, kind of trying to bang your way in. So that I think that's true. That's a job without much family, I think.
oh,
There are
interesting.
partnerships, but not family. And it's very much like you got to find that information. There's no unconditional love, you gotta pull your weight, or you're out. No matter how great the people are that you work with, they still need you to do a job that's important. So that was interesting. But yeah, and I think I've often skirted the outsides of a lot of those work environments, and I've been some kind of an outlier in some weird way, in most jobs, not
Well,
all of
tell us
them.
about Tell Me Everything because we have new listeners. Maybe they haven't heard of that one.
Sure, sure. So Tell Me Everything. The full title is Tell Me Everything: The Story of a Private Investigation. And it's a book about my experience as a rookie private investigator working on the very first ever Title IX sexual assault case. So now when you hear Title IX in the news, you think, oh, well, somebody sexually assaulted someone else, and that's usually what the case is. But before our case, it was not. Title IX meant something different. It meant, oh, they have nice jerseys and we have bad jerseys. They have a nice football, or they have a nice, you know, uh, they have nice fields for soccer and we have bad fields for soccer, right? So it was more about facilities and money, et cetera. And then, so our case was the first case to bring that law, that whole area of law, to sexual assault, and to treat sexual assault as a human rights issue and not just quote unquote just a criminal issue. So it really changed the landscape a lot in colleges and schools, and made the institutions themselves responsible for the safety and well-being for their female, and also, thanks to Biden, also trans students. So it really did change things for people.
I can imagine. Yes,
Yeah.
I read the book. And is
Mhm.
it, I mean, did you fictionalize it at all? I was trying to remember if you fictionalized it
No.
or no.
Well, I had to, in a little bit. Like, so I didn't fictionalize any of the facts. All the things that happened, the way the case was laid out, all that was true. And, you've read the book, like everything that could have gone wrong went wrong, right? So it was, all that were true, and all the details were true. But I did have to change names. I mean, I didn't have to, but I wanted to protect the identities of especially the witnesses and the plaintiffs if they wanted it. It's on public record for the plaintiffs, right? Because it's a public case paid for by taxpayer dollars. So that's free information, also in the newspapers. But as far as, there are a lot of witnesses who came forward, a ton of witnesses who wanted to stay anonymous. So for that reason, I changed all their names and identifying features and geographies. And this was really what kept me up at night. I was like, am I gonna out anyone that I'm trying to protect, so I'd wake up in the middle of the night and be like, no, not Arkansas, Alabama, or something like that, these dumb notes that I had to, implement in the book. So that those parts are fictionalized. And I also did sometimes merge characters together, like, if they were similar in, for example, like there would be 5 football players I talked to, but they all kind of were the same. And one had a line of dialogue that I really liked, and then one had a kind of characteristic that I liked, and I kind of smushed them together into one guy. Yeah, but I always had like an inspiration for that one guy. I'd be like, that's mostly like this guy, but I'll add these other features as well.
Right, to simplify maybe a little bit more.
Yeah, I had to protect not just the innocent, but also the guilty too, because all of the people who committed these crimes, out of all of them, none of them were charged criminally,
Okay.
because our legal system is broken. So you can't say, oh, this person assaulted this person, unless they have not only been charged but also convicted. So,
Right. So it's still allegedly, right?
ah, I hate that word allegedly. When I do readings, I just drop it. I'm like, no, I just cross it out, right? But but I have to say all the time, like I had to say it sometimes a couple times in a sentence, allegedly. It's so bad that I was like, maybe I should just call this book Allegedly. Allegedly. It was the worst. But yeah, because I knew these things happen for sure, and it always weakens it when you say allegedly. But so that you have to do what's safest for everybody. So I did, again, there's a little, that's the bit of fiction that did take place.
And did you have to get permission to write the book, or did you ask anyone's permission to write the book? I mean, you said it was public record, so I mean, did you?
So that's a great question. I didn't have to, right? Like I never signed any non-disclosure
Okay.
agreements. I never like, there are all these private things that sometimes they try and get you to sign. No one ever even asked me to sign anything like that. No one ever, uh, there's also this thing called work for hire. So if you sign a work for hire agreement, then everything you do belongs to the company you did it for. And I didn't do that. So I was pretty safe as far as what I was allowed to say. But I did, the attorney that I worked with, I had always thought he would write about it. So and the reason I thought this is when he hired me as a private investigator, he said, I know you're a writer, don't write about this because I'm going to write about this. So I was like, I'm not going to, not going to write about it. I never even imagined I would write about it. So time went on, nobody, and I thought either he would, and or one of the plaintiffs would, and or one of the witnesses might want to come forward and do that. So I waited and waited and waited, and 15 years went by, and between when the case began and when my book was published, it was 20 years, right? And nobody, I'm sorry, I don't know if you can hear my dog. Okay, good. So between when the case began and when I wrote it, no one really substantially wrote about it. And I would read books, like I would read Title IX books because I'm a super geek, and they wouldn't even mention our case. So I was like, this case is getting lost to history. And it was the first. It was historic. It was big. It was 5 years long. It was traumatic and dramatic and funny even, and all of that was getting lost. So I did go to the person I called Grayson, who's the attorney on the case that I worked with, and he and I are still friends. And I said, hey, how would you feel if I wrote this book? I'm thinking of doing this. And he was like, great, I'll help you. And he sent me all kinds of court documents that were public record, but it would have cost me, I don't know, maybe $15,000 to get all those records. So
Wow.
he really helped me a lot. And he also helped me even sift through them. He'd be like, this one's not going to give you so much information, but this one would. And we'd have 4-hour breakfasts where he would help me. So I owe a debt of gratitude to him and his, not just his work. I mean, he did this case, this amazing case, right? But also the help that he gave me through the book. And he read it, I think he read it 3 times for
Wow.
accuracy. And also I wanted him to be okay with it. But the funny thing is, here's another fictional thing. So he, when I asked, are you okay with it if I do this? He said, yeah, but make me, fictionalize me, make me different. And he's like, make me tall. And then so I made this whole character, this whole person that he's not. And I started writing about it, and he read it in the first go round, and he's like, change me back, change me back.
Oh, no.
So I had to find all the details, like I had made him like tall and tattooed and younger or whatever. So I had to like find all the weird things that were not him and try and move him back into his personality. So that was a little harder. But it was funny. He's like, I don't like what you did at all.
Yeah, that's interesting. He wasn't young and tattooed in the
Yeah.
final version.
I know he was. He was, a lawyer, and but it was great to have an ally like that. Someone who saw the need for the book, understood what I was trying to do, and helped. So
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, sometimes I try to talk to my husband about things I'm writing, and he's like, he's an engineer. So he's like,
right.
I do not understand. I am really sorry. I mean, he's not even really a reader except for like short articles, you know?
Uh-huh.
So he's like, I'm sorry. I do not understand.
Does he read your work?
He's read one book, I think.
Oh my gosh, really? Just one?
And
Well,
he
that's
tried to
still a
read
lot.
another one, and I switched the character names because they were like in sort of like had to hide their identity. And he's like, "No, you lost me. I can't do it."
Oh wow. Oh, but
And it was sad because that was the best one. That was like my thriller that I thought he'd like. And he's like, "No,
oh.
change your names. I can't do it."
Oh no. That's so, but it's funny when you are a writer, like yourself, you feel like everybody's a writer, like I was like, oh yeah, everybody writes. Yeah, like because those are the people I meet, that's my community. And then I sometimes need that little reality check where I'm like, no, most people are not writers. Most people think that what we do is super weird, and it kind of comes back in my face like, oh yeah, maybe it is a little weird to be living in our head all the time, compared to being an engineer and actually getting paid for your job,
Yeah.
right?
Wait, you mean I only make like 1 cent an hour, you know?
I know, right? If that, I think I sometimes would be like, I'm gonna take a look at what this cost, right? Like what this book
Totally.
cost. Sometimes, yeah, sometimes it actually costs more
Oh yeah.
money than
Yeah.
than you make, even if you do make money from books, which is a rare thing. Because if you look at, of course, if you look at the opportunity cost of time, but sometimes you travel to do a reading, or you pay for books so you can give them away or whatever, and there you are, right? And it's a labor of love.
You have to do it because you love it. Yeah.
Yeah, do you love it?
Oh, I love it. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, what do you love about it?
Probably the escape more than anything.
Right,
But
right.
yeah.
And there's more to escape from by the day.
Okay, but we're getting in this trap where I'm telling you things and you're not telling
Oh
me
gosh, sorry.
anything.
Oh, I think it's fun. I want to know.
I know. But tell me about your work before. Tell me everything.
Okay, so Tell Me Everything is my third book, and Save Me Stranger is coming out in like a week. Oh my goodness. And that's my fourth book. And my first book was a short story collection that came out in 2001. That's a long time ago. And then between that and Tell Me Everything was a novel that came out in 2015. And the novel didn't do very well. It really bombed, like it super bombed. And that was hard, because my first book was just a short story collection, so those never like super sell, but it did fine, it did respectably. And then my second book did not at all, and it was my first book length work, and I made every mistake you can imagine. It took me forever to write, and but it wasn't like by the end of that time, it wasn't, you expect if a book takes you 10 years, it would be 10 years good, right? But it wasn't 10 years good. It was like 2 years good, because I had kind of rewritten it over and over again. not really knowing what I was doing. But that book taught me a lot. It taught me a lot about plot structure, about all the mistakes that I made twice and three times on that book. Um, and it helped me with my job now when I teach students, and I teach at the Lighthouse Book Project, which is a uh, book writing program, and or when I work with clients on their books, I I'll read it and I'll be like, oh, I know this one. I know this mistake. I recognize this one, and I know how to fix it now. So that was, I felt like it was the most valuable book for me in terms of understanding narrative, was my novel Contenders. But I still think it's a flawed book. I think there are good things about it, but every now and then I'm like, I wish I could take another crack at it now, knowing what I know now. But I don't want to. I don't want to move. I want to move forward, not back. I don't know. Have you ever felt that way, Trisha, where you're like, I wish I had another crack at that one?
Yeah, so my first series I wrote it as a college series, and a lot of people have said this character is too old for like what they're going through. It should have been a high school series, and every once in a while I'm like, I could rewrite it as a high school series. It might sell better. And then I'm like, why would I do that to myself?
Right, right. And like, yeah, because you want to move forward, you want to do the next idea too. But it's weird, like, the book's hanging back. It's sort of like this remnant of the mistake. I don't know about you, but like, I feel like older books, they do carry the like remnants of mistakes that you made and things now, things that make you cringe now. And every writer I've ever spoken to feels that way. Like they'll go to like an old edition and they'll be like, ah, there's the misspelling, or there's the grammatical there's my repeated word, and we're always just perseverating on the thing that we should have done better. um I don't know if that's true for you, but it's definitely true for me. And I know
Yeah,
that's going to be true for this next book too. It's not even out yet.
but I think we can be our own worst critics, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. I think we have to be, really, when you're a writer, don't you think? Because if you don't if you don't put yourself through the ringer, uh, it's unlikely you're going to find someone who's going to go line by line, page by page with you and be like, "Hey, here,"
That's
unless
true.
you pay for it, right? And that not all of us, if we are writers, we generally can't afford that. So, so we have to do it ourselves. We have to be ruthless with ourselves. So by the time that it comes out, it's what we want, and we feel confident in it, I think. I don't know.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, you're right. Yeah. But I don't want to see all my mistakes. So I want to be like the ostrich.
You're like, it's perfect the way it is.
Yeah, no, but to become a better writer, that's completely true.
So you never read old work or look
Oh
at
no,
it as such
I
impression.
do. I read them and yes, I learn from them. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's a hard thing to do, I think. Although sometimes it's like, oh wow, I don't even remember writing that, but it's pretty cool. That's okay. So you can, I think, surprise yourself sometimes with the old stuff. I
so
think
you said you had all these different jobs. How
yeah,
did you end up becoming a writer and now like you're a complete book person, it sounds like.
yeah. um, I don't, I don't know if like becoming, becoming a writer. I don't. That's not usually like a job path for most people, unless you're independently wealthy. You usually can't just like come out of school and be like, I'm going to be a writer, and here I am. I'm a writer, and I'm somehow paying the mortgage or rent or whatever. Um, so I think having all the weird jobs is the career path of being a writer, right? I remember I faced a choice when I came out of school. I had so many friends who were getting into these amazing career track jobs, and working for Apple or working for a think tank in Washington or whatever, and I'm hearing about these jobs that obsessed them and took up all their time. And I was like, okay, I could maybe do that, and maybe even retire early and I could write then. Or maybe I could just get jobs that when I leave the job, I don't think about that job, and maybe I could. So I really did try to work part time as much as possible, or I'd temp for 2, 3 months, 4 months, and then I'd take a month off and I just write. So I did everything I could to preserve my time, because I knew that time was going to make the difference between whether or not I was going to be able to write or not write. And I saw it. I saw everyone getting sucked into jobs. I also purposely tried to live in places that were very, very cheap. Like I didn't move to New York because I knew I'd spend all my time trying to make my rent, or something like that. So I had like this like kind of loser, what people would call a loser existence when I was younger. And I think a lot of people did think of me that way. They're like, loser. She's like, secretary in a pet foods place or whatever. You know what I mean? So you had to swallow a lot of pride to do that. But it did keep me writing books. And that ended up accruing, right? So then you can also get jobs later where you're teaching or editing for people too. So you're not just like you're not doing the job so you can do the job you love, right? So you're doing a job you also love so you can do a job that you primarily love, right? So, and that's where I am now finally, but it took longer than most people. That said, I do have a lot of clients and a lot of students who did the other one. They were engineers first, or they had 30-year, 40-year careers as a college professor, whatever. And then now they're retired. They're going back into writing too. So it's never too late, I think. It's just I was impatient, and I also secretly had this feeling that I might die before I got a chance to write these books. I have this like fear of death. That kind of kept me going with the whole thing. I don't know if you can hear my dog, but she's
No,
like,
we can't at
oh,
all.
good. Because
Yeah.
like, yeah, there's someone at the door clearly like violating her precious space.
Yeah. I get that every once in a while. Yeah, these microphones are great. Well,
Oh,
I have
good.
such admiration for somebody with your like outlook, because I was raised in a home that was like very work based, and like you got your self-worth from working and doing things. And then like it wasn't until I got older that I realized, hey, like I don't have to do that. Like I had an aunt who just had a regular job, and she didn't live to work, she worked to live, which
Right.
is, a totally different life concept. And so yeah, I have admiration for people that got that sooner than later in life, right?
Well, I appreciate that, but to all external appearances, I'm like sleeping on like a secondhand mattress, and you know what I mean? Like it didn't look very admirable. It just looked kind of like hippie deadbeat kind of thing. So but there was logic behind it for me. But I don't think other people uh really got it. They were like, why don't you get it? Like, why don't you get a better job? And I'd be like, this is fine. I have time now. And because I never cared a whole lot about money. I don't, I'm like, I care about the town I live in. I don't care about the actual rooms that I live in so much. You know what I mean? So for me, I was like, I don't want to spend my whole life working towards something that I don't care about. I want to spend my life working towards something I do care about. So, plus again, my distrust of my own mortality. I thought, I better get cracking, and I still have that. I don't know if you ever feel this way, but I always feel like, when I get really excited about a book, I'm just so worried that I'm going to die before I finish it, and so it's this sort of, do you ever feel that way?
I don't.
Oh, good. Good. I'm glad. I'm glad you don't feel that way because it's awful. Because it takes so long to write a book. You're like, oh my God, I have this fire under my butt. Yeah.
Well, what's next for you? Is this the hated question, or is it the good
Oh
question?
no, it's a fine question. So the next project is I don't like doing the same thing twice. So I think my next project is this historical possible mystery. I don't know how to write historical fiction. I don't know how to write a mystery. So that's going to take a lot of learning and failing. So it's going to be a challenge, but I think that's what I'm really interested in, this one idea of a certain period of time, a certain situation, a certain and there might be a journalistic aspect to it as well, because I found out some like suspicious death, and and there are no records, and so in some ways it's a little bit of a journalistic dead end, but in some ways I might be able to sort of figure that out, and also it offers some opportunities, because I'm like, well, if there are no facts around this, I get to make up the facts.
Right.
So that's probably the next thing. I also want to do a book of essays at some point around work, actually, around all like the kooky jobs that I've done, and just also about women and work, how we relate to work. It's how what we're told to be and not be in work, and the models that we take on in work. So I'm kind of interested in that too. Um, and a few other projects and a bunch of essays and some stories, and yeah, so a lot of stuff
Fun.
that hopefully again I will be able to do. I always have too many ideas and not enough time to do the ideas. But how about you? What's next for you?
Well, talking about Lighthouse Writers, I just started a screenplay class there.
Oh, amazing! Who's it with?
Chris, and I don't know how to pronounce his last name. It's a G. I'm gonna mess up his last name, but
Chris
Chris
G.
G.
Chrissy G, like Kenny G.
Yes, Christy. So yeah,
Are you
I'm really
enjoying it?
excited about that. Yeah, well, we just had the first class, so yeah, but I'm a little bit intimidated because there's all these screenwriters that have already movies already like made, and
Oh.
that's really cool though. So this is my first time screenwriting. So
Oh, that's amazing. That's so cool. I love Lighthouse because you have all these opportunities to try new genres and try new things. And, I don't just teach there, I also take classes there too. I'll take a class there, like Lit Fest. I try and book as many as I can. So I think it's a great community. I hope you love it. I hope you have a good class. And are you looking at doing a screenplay for one of your books?
yes, so talk about seeing all the bad things or the wrong things you may have done in your book. I mean, doing a screenplay is different from a novel. You can put many
Right.
more subplots and many more things in it, but seeing how I might have rewritten that book now is kind of interesting.
Oh,
But
that is cool. That is really. Are you going to take the early one and make them younger? Is that the series you're going to do, or a different one?
no, I'm doing one of my fantasy series. It's vampires and witches and all those things. So
Oh, that's cool. High production value.
yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, good luck with that. I have no idea how to do that kind of work at all. I think that's it's a whole other brain, and really, really interesting. But
Yeah, so we'll see. I don't know. It sounded fun, and I was like, okay, I'll learn something new. So yeah.
absolutely. And also like screenplays, they're so good at structure, right? Like they're that's their thing, is structure. So I think you learn, I think, about not just screenwriting, but also you can apply that to your novels too, I think.
Right, yeah, the plot and everything. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, amazing. That's awesome.
Well, Erica, tell us and everyone out there where we can find you and your books.
Oh, great. Yeah, so my most recent book, Save Me Stranger, will be out on the 21st, and that should be available wherever. Hopefully bookstores, if your bookstore maybe, or but also Amazon and all the online places, And I'm going to be doing some readings, mostly locally, and all those are listed on the events page on my website, erikakrouse.com. But I'm spelled really weird, like, so it's got a lot of K's in it. But but those that I have a listing there of the events, and mostly around the Front Range, and just a little bit out of there. So too, a few little trips here and there, but mostly Colorado, because I'm a Colorado person.
Fine. Yes, we will have all your links in the description so people can find those there.
Oh, thank you. And thank you so much for having me on your podcast again, Trisha. It was such a pleasure last time, and it is again a genuine pleasure to talk to you again today.
I definitely agree. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
Bye.
Bye. Are we done?
Hold on.
Oh,
Oh, there we go. Where's the button?